What's up, humans, and welcome to a new Psicoactivo. Happy Monday, everybody. I hope you guys are doing great. Last Saturday, there was a multi-Reddit AMA between Leslie Kean and Diana Pasulka. And I want to give a major shout out to Andrea for everything she does, because she is like one of the major forces that moves all the subreddits that are linked to UFOs. So I want to thank her for being really nice and always very embracing towards the work that I do. So thank you for that. But yeah, she gave me a heads up that this was happening. I didn't get a chance to ask questions for myself because I had a pretty busy week last week. But I want to talk about this Reddit AMA. There were a couple of things that I really found interesting. One of them even brought me back to the days when I read the Da Vinci Code, which is one of the best-selling books of all time, written by Dan Brown. He wrote a series about all of those stories of Professor Langdon, and he talks about this controversial idea that Jesus Christ didn't really pass away. He lived on, and he had a lineage and all of that. And that is a really controversial idea that, as of now, I think it's still not true, but there was an interesting tidbit from that Reddit AMA that jumped out at me, because when Diana Pasulka went to the Vatican with Tim Taylor, who she still calls Tyler, she was like given a tap on the shoulder and told to not investigate on the Templars. Who are the Templars? The Knights Templar actually no longer exist. They were dissolved in 1312. They were an order of the Catholic Church that were a major part of the Crusades. And the original order was officially disbanded by Pope Clement V in 1312 because of pressure from King Philip IV of France. The Templars were accused of heresy, and their assets were confiscated by the European rulers or transferred to the orders, such as the Knights Hospitaller. However, there are modern days Knights Templar groups right now. The Masonic Knights Templar, the Sovereign Military Order of the Temple of Jerusalem, the Ordo Supremus Militaris Templi Hero Solimitani. I don't know what that is. And there are other groups. And this little snippet from Diana, I found it really interesting. And I'm going to play for you guys so you guys can check it out. And then we're going into angels and demons, because I've been wanting for Diana to give us a more specific definition of what she means when she talks about that. She's spoken about it on the Sean Ryan show. She's spoken about it in many, many different ways. But I think this is one of the most specific and descriptive definitions of what angels and demons might be. The framework, because I don't know if she thinks as they were depicted are real, So let's get to the Templar stuff first. So here it is.
Speculated online that you may have gotten a tap on the shoulder to stop this line of research, but I'm not sure if that really happens.
Okay, this is good. So when I was at the Vatican, Tyler and I met Peter Gumpel, who was supposed to be a cardinal, but he just declined to do that because he is a scholar. So he's a scholar, but he's also, for the popes, he's passed away. And when we met him, he was 94. So he had been a person who would advise the Pope. So he's a papal advisor. He was also involved in a lot of the canonization. He was the person who was the devil's advocate during those processes for canonization of saints. So he's really interesting. And during this time period, he invited me to do the Vatican has a lot of information about the Templars that's not really been published. And so he invited me to do a publication on that. And I said yes. And that was going to be really exciting. The tap on the shoulder that these people are referencing is definitely happened. So basically that was something that couldn't happen, that book and the access to those information for reasons I don't know. Okay, so reasons of which I don't know.
So one of those reasons might be something that Timothy Hogan told Danny Jones a while ago. This is just a correlation that I found because I saw that long podcast with Timothy Hogan, but way back when, and I found it really interesting. It didn't happen too long ago. It was like 10 months ago or so, but he spoke about allegedly the Templars having found Jesus's remains. And I don't know if this tap on the shoulder to Diana was because of something related to this. Keep in mind that, as I told you, the Knights Templar as they were no longer exist. They're not like really the Knights Templar. And there are many groups that claim to be. I don't think the Knights Templar as they were exist anymore, but Tim Hogan claims to be the Grand Master of the Knights Templar. And this is what he said about the bones of Jesus Christ. And I don't know if Diana was prevented from investigating further on the Templars by the Vatican because of this, but check it out.
Has anyone verified or like tried to do testing on the bones?
Not yet, but that's something we want to do. That's part of the.
And how would you confirm or deny that it was from Jesus? It was Jesus.
Well, we know. How should I say this? This is sensitive information. So there are, as I understand it, certain fragments that exist that were found recently in the Talpiot tomb.
Where's that?
In the ossuaries in East Jerusalem.
Okay.
This is originally where these bones came from back in the during the time of the Crusades. That's where they pulled them out of. So we would be able to match, assuming the story all lines up with what our history has said and the ship logs and everything else. We would be able to verify that these bones match in DNA to the fragments that they've found in the Talpiot tomb recently, first of all. And then that would place them with that. And then at that point, any other genetic testing would be, could be done publicly so that people are aware of everything. We're not trying to hide it. We've just been trying to protect it. It was very much understood when this tomb was discovered that which had the names of the Jesus and Mary Magdalene and John the Baptist on the ossuaries, that that if these had been turned over to the Vatican, that they would have just disappeared. If they'd been turned over to the Pope, they would have made them disappear because it is contrary to the Christian faith.
Right.
If at least the modern interpretation.
Yes.
Now, from a Templar standpoint, there's no contradiction because the Templars believe that the resurrection again was the anastasis. It was just the awakening to gnosis. So there wasn't necessarily a bodily resurrection to begin with.
Right.
And from a Templar perspective, we also believe in reincarnation, and we believe that there are passages in the New Testament that justify reincarnation. And so to us, being born again is literally just being born again.
Shit, dude.
And yeah, this is highly, highly controversial. I completely get it because somebody asked, why would it be controversial? Because the Christian faith believes that Jesus Christ resurrected. And this alleged storyline talks about Jesus Christ not even dying in the first place. This also ties into a whole other thing that Dr. Amon Hillman talks about that I won't get into right now. But I wonder if Diana Pasulka got that tap on the shoulder because of something like this. And if you read that book, the Da Vinci Code, it talks about this. It talks about the remains being found and Jesus Christ having a lineage, and it's really wild. And honestly, I as I told you, I think this is just fiction, unless there's like actual evidence and proof. But it is weird that Diana Pasulka was denied investigating the Templars further by the Vatican. Now let's move on to the question that I like the most from the whole Reddit AMA. And this is it.
Yeah, this one is directed for both of us, Diana, from High Strangeness, from Witch Doctor HN. Do you think it is more accurate to think of the beings involved in the phenomenon as spiritual beings that have gone by many different names in the past that we're now calling aliens, or physical beings that have been named in the past using spiritual and or religious terms? I think you should take that one on. It sort of touches on things, some of the things you've already said, actually. About
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So, okay, so it religion is, so if you look at traditional religions, right? So Hinduism and, Judaism, so forth. These are grammars and systems that help people talk about, first of all, like cosmology, why we're here, what are human beings, what's our place in the universe, and this, what are these things that are intervening? Are they, so in these religions, they're called deities, right? Gods and goddesses and things like that. Okay. So fast forward to the modern era where we have the scientific method. By the way, a lot of scientists are completely spiritual, and we can talk. There's a question I saw about that, and we'll talk about that later. So I think it's wrong to think that the history of science is the history of the materialist framework where we don't think about, angels and things like that. No. When you look at scientists, a lot of the best of them actually do think about those things. So, all right. So, but, the dogmatic position for modern time period is to, kind of like get rid of things we can't put under a microscope. So, people having experiences of non-human intelligences and things like that, we can't replicate that. We can't put it under a microscope. It doesn't exist. And then we're brought up, at least in the United States, with this thought. That's called secularism, right? It doesn't really inform our institutions and that. That. Okay, so then we say, wow, we have the, very credible people from the U.S. government telling us that they have, they have data about these non-human intelligences. We have lots and lots of millions of people having this observation that there are non-human intelligences interacting with them. And what does that, how do we look at that with respect to history and religion? Do we say that aliens today are deities of yesterday? Okay, so that's one interpretive framework. Or, are these spiritual beings, or are these physical beings? When we look at the data of people having these experiences, like UAP experiences, sometimes they see a event that happens, but they see it in different ways. The example I used in American Cosmic is Ray Hernandez. So Ray Hernandez and his wife are looking at the same thing. He's atheist, and he's calling this a plasma being, and she's a Catholic, and she calls this an angel. But they actually see it differently. You also see this in Marian apparitions, right? Not everybody can see it. Some people can see it. Sometimes they see it differently. So why is that? These beings, are they material? Are they physical, or are they something like a mixture? So in the religious traditions, you have a different idea than we do. We have a dualistic idea here that we've inherited. I don't know, even Descartes wasn't strictly dualist, although he's the famous dualist, right? The spirit and matter dualist. But that's not perhaps how reality exists. So it appears that when one looks at these events, one sees beings that are, partake in both matter and spirit, and I'm using that as a dualism, but like there's a different form of matter. All right. So that's just a kind of a long intro into what do we call these beings? I mean, I think there's a variety of different non-human intelligences, and it appears that, so some could be possibly extraterrestrial, some could be interdimensional. We don't have enough data, at least I don't. And talking with those men of the invisible college and so forth, I don't have enough data to determine of what they are at this point. Even Tyler didn't know. That's why he vacillated in, at first he thought they were extraterrestrial. He interfaced with them in space, right? So they're, because he could see what was going up when they were launching things. But they didn't know exactly what they were, what their motivations were, anything like that. Once he became aware of the historical record of contact with beings that were, let's call them deities, right? We don't have to call them deities. They have powers that seem super normal, right? So that's why he had his shift to a much more spiritual framework of what they could be. The framework of demons and angels, right? So this framework of non-human intelligences that have a specific what you call context within, say, Judaism and Christianity. You see other kinds of beings in different types of religions that seem similar. Okay, so I remember when I was at the donation site, which is what Gary calls the site that I visited in New Mexico. I remember as we were coming back in the car, and he said, if this was 100 years ago, we'd be calling these demons and angels. And I thought that was interesting because here you have a scientist today, Gary Nolan, studying UAP and so forth, doing nuts and bolts research, using this framework. But the reason he was using that framework, because the night before he showed me his research, which he just talked about at the Soul Foundation conference in Italy a couple days ago, which was the brain injury research that, when people sometimes have UAP events, often it's not great, right? It's bad. They have, things happen to them that are bad. And so this framework of demons and angels, in a sense, is a framework of good and bad, right? So good and bad, effects. So in that sense, yes, I think that this is a helpful framework, because we can, although we might not, it might be archaic to say these things that we see are demons or these things that we see are angels, but the effects, there are good effects and there are bad effects.
And this is why I keep insisting and trying to understand that angels, demons framework is just a reference to describe whether it's a positive or negative effect. I know that, for example, Jeff Nucitelli, he talks about his experiences and they're always positive. They've been positive for the most part. He thinks that it was because when he had his experience, he was with friends and he was able to see the same thing with his friends and it gave him validity. But there are people who talk about their experiences being negative. For example, Jay Stratton or Jim Semivan. And it's just a framework. Even a professor of religious studies like Dr. Diana Pasulka is telling you this. This doesn't mean that she believes angels and demons as they're depicted in the Bible are real. She's just telling you that that's a framework they used back then. And even Dr. Gary Nolan acknowledged it. He was like, if we lived 100 years prior to this, we would be talking about angels and demons, not ETs. So I really like this. I was happy to hear Dr. Diana Pasulka addressing this in a more detail so that people understand better what she means when she's talking about angels and demons and how she is investigating this whole thing. She has a book out, actually. That's why she did this AMA. I'm trying to get her on the show. The book is called The Others. and I can't wait to read it because her first 2 books are really cool. I really enjoyed them, and can't wait for that one. But let me know what you think in the comments about all of this, about how she is studying and what she interprets to be the old gods, angels, demons, and that tap on the shoulder she got from the Vatican about the Templars. What do you think that was about? Do you think it has anything to do with what Timothy Hogan talked about? Or do you think it's unrelated? Let me know in the comments. If you like the content you see, I'm going to ask you to like, share, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. That's all you need to do in order to help us, and it is what helps us the most. So thank you. But if you want to support us in other ways, there's a few links down there you can choose from. You can become a member on YouTube, or you can support us through KGRA. Anything you choose to do is always appreciated. So thank you. And that's it for me today on this video, but I'll see you guys in the next one. Remember, stay curious and inquisitive like Dr. Diana Pasulka, always. Bye.
Psicoactive.